So yeah, this was an amazing thing. When Trina called and said, you should do this, I was like, okay, I've got my slides, I can do this. And then I was like, no, I'm going to do something totally different and actually talk about some of the newer things that have taken place. One of the things that's taken place is actually change. Because change always takes place. But change actually happens really fast. And that's some of the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight. A couple of months ago, it was announced that people who actually click on banner ads has dropped 50% since 2007. And so here you go out to the sort of races talking about social media and the digital channels, and it's like, interactive is so cool and so amazing, and so, people respond, and it's all this stuff. And the reality of it was, well, it's not doing that great, actually. Or not. I mean, we'll talk about why I think it's still doing really well. I think people clicking on banner ads was us online marketers making a big mistake and trying to follow or not really follow traditional media and make some moves. And so change does happen fast. The scary thing about this statistic, if it doesn't depress you enough to think about that, is that there's about 1.7 billion people online right now. And out of those 50% that drop, the full amount of people who actually still click on banner ads, only 8% of the internet population accounts for them. So only 8% of those 1.7 billion people are clicking on any banners at all, to sort of just frame where the world's at for you guys. So when I was asked to do this, I realized, so am I going to talk about 3 things I didn't talk about or whatever? And I had this moment where I thought of that Seinfeld episode. You know, the one where Costanza goes for a massage, and he can't get a girl massage, and it's a guy. And he comes back and he tells Jerry that it moved, and he doesn't know if that means something or not. And so what I thought I would do is share with you 3 things that moved in the past. So I sort of updated it a little bit to keep with the marketing thing. So 3 things. 1 is reality moved, 2 is going to be transparency moved, and 3 is going to be laziness moved, which is sort of a weird thing, but you'll see what I mean if this works out for you. I don't know. I've never done this before, so we'll see how this goes. So number 1, reality. What happened in reality? Well, one of the things that happened that I think has fundamentally changed the game for us as marketers is augmented reality. And that's what I mean by reality change. How many people here have an iPhone? How many people have the new iPhone with video? So you know about these augmented reality apps. What's happening, one of the bigger changes that's fascinating to me is the fact that you can now take your phone and actually layer on new information on your existing reality. And so what you're actually seeing here, that's the power. It's not my slides, they're not animated, it's just the power. I wanted to do animated slides tonight, so I just, So what you're seeing here is actually the Yelp augmented reality app. And this is actually New York City. What you do is you fire up the app, and it turns on your video camera. When you point it to anything, a hotel, restaurant, whatever, it shows you the rating on the screen. And you can click on that and learn more information. It might show you the menu, it might show you what reviews people have said about it, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I realized at the moment that I obviously didn't have a chance to talk about in the book, because this is fairly new, 1 is millions and millions of people have downloaded this stuff. But 2, more importantly, is this really does change everything we know about business, right? Like imagine walking into a hotel and saying that you can get a room cheaper 3 doors down. And imagine how empowering that is to consumers. And when you think of how it empowers consumers, what I'm hoping you'll realize is that it changes your game as marketers. And it doesn't matter to me if you're on brand side or client side or agency side, it changes the game. As consumers become more and more empowered, it changes the rules dramatically. And the other sort of change in the idea of reality is what online means. And so you know this if you have an iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, just bear with me. 2 of the real powerful functionality is 2 things. 1 is the GPS. It's the location stuff. And the other one is the altimeter. When you move it, stuff moves, right? And so we live in this world now where we're starting to untether. I mean, we don't need to be physically somewhere to go online. Being online is like electricity now. It's becoming that persistent and pervasive. And I think that that's sort of another fundamental change in terms of what it means for us realistically to market and communicate. So I think that that's another sort of tenet to the idea of reality and how it connects. Number 2, one of the areas I didn't really talk too much about that I'll share with you guys is the idea of transparency. And I think it's interesting to follow the conversations online. Like, how many of you read blogs? Okay. So you know, like a lot of this stuff around pay per post and a lot of stuff around what's ethics and what's right. The FTC recently is coming down on bloggers who are taking money, which has been a hot thing too. And my sort of general feeling about the whole thing is transparency is sort of obvious and easy. Right? You say you're being paid for it, you say who you work for, you say what you do. It's a given. What I like to say is transparency is table stakes. If you're not transparent, you don't build community, you suck. And that's the real sort of currency, right? The currency is no longer this idea of buying media dollars in this world. The currency is building community through being transparent. But transparency isn't enough, because you could be transparent, but you could be, 6 months out of university and you're basically someone who's just spewing what you think. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just there are people who have been doing this 20 years also who might have a different perspective. And so I think one of the other shifts that didn't talk about a lot in the book, but I think we can, I guess, sort of acknowledge is this idea that in this new world, it takes more than transparency. And the sort of next level of transparency, I believe, is credibility. And so I think that that's where we really need to be focusing now on marketers as well, is how do you build credibility? We're already saying that we're being paid for this, we're not being paid. How do you build credibility? So one of the ways I'm thinking new about transparency and sort of shifting it to credibility is this idea of doing it. And what I mean by that is there are many people who are on Twitter who have 1 million followers. There are many people on Facebook who are able to get 6, 7, 10,000 friends. There are many blogs out there where people say things that people connect with and they have hundreds of thousands of viewers. But until you as an individual can do it for someone else besides yourself, I don't know how good it is in terms of actual credibility in the marketplace. Meaning, I think it's really easy to sell yourself because it's you know the product intimately. But how well can you take the skills that we're learning in these digital channels and actually make it work for clients? And I think that's a real big step that we're going to see in the coming months and years. I think people are going to start looking at a lot of these people who have the #1 and #2 blog on Ad Age, Power 150, and be like, can this person actually do it for anyone else but themselves? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that a lot of people do it for themselves and they make a great living. Kudos to them. But to be a marketer, I believe it's not about how you market yourself. It's about how you're able to take other people's brilliant ideas and make them work in the marketplace. That's my sort of little kick lately, if you will. And part of it ties into this, which is I think a lot of people, and listen, I get this a lot. My agency, Twist Image, we have 90+ employees. We have offices in Montreal and Toronto. We have big clients. It's all exciting. But I walk into offices after a lot of my competitors do, and my competitors are telling these brands, you need to be on Twitter, and you need to be on Facebook, and you need to be on YouTube. And the reason they say that is because the questions that came back to them was, what are we doing on YouTube to the agency? What are we doing on Facebook? And I think that that's a stupid question. And the real question we need to be asking is why? Why should you be on Facebook? Why should you be on YouTube? Why should you be on Twitter? Why is strategic? And that's where I'm going with this, is how do you build credibility beyond transparency? Is actually by taking these ideas and thinking strategically about it. What is this brand? How does it connect to people? What do they do? Everything else is just a tactic, or as I call it, a shiny object. It's like Twitter's really cool now. Yeah. Facebook's, yeah. But unless you understand strategically how it ties into the business, you're going to fail. I promise you, every single time you'll fail. The brands that are great at this are the stories you don't hear because it's tied into strategy. They're actually pulling huge ROI out of this. And it's a word that you don't hear a lot in social media. Social media ROI. There's a ton of it, guys. People are making a ton of money with social media because it's tied to their strategy. It's just not cool because they're not on Twitter and they don't have 1 million followers. But we can talk about that a little bit later, too. My last one is the idea of laziness, which is sort of a strange thing to say. But this is something that I've been thinking a lot about lately that I wish I had put a lot more thought into the book on. Not me, full disclosure. Was me one day, actually, and I have people here who know that. There are people, in fact, scratch that. The majority of consumers hate their job. And they go home at 6 o'clock, and all they want to do is smoke a joint, drink some beer, and forget about the day they had, and forget about the fact that they have to do that all again tomorrow. That is the majority of people you are marketing to. They don't want to upload pictures. They don't want to tag photos. They don't want to add links. They don't want to be searchable, findable, clickable, deliverable. They don't want any of that. They don't want to create content for you either, by the way. They just want to be lazy for a bit. And you know what? So do I. And so do you. Think about it, like 10, 11 o'clock at night when you finally take the laptop off of your lap and the TV is the only thing now blocking you. You just want to tune out. You don't want to create the news. You want to listen to it and feed it in. And so there is something hugely powerful in the idea of serendipity that I think is tragically missing in social media. The ability for you to come to an event and hear somebody say something and take it in, or see a billboard or see a TV ad or a wonderful magazine ad that adds value to your life, whether you like to admit it or not. You say you don't want advertising, but trust me, if there wasn't any ads, one of my rants lately has been, if there wasn't any major ads for U2 coming to town and you found out after that they had been here, you'd be pissed off. right? We count on mass media to inform us. And people say, oh, you know, I would have it in my RSS feed. You might not.